Hello and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. I decided that on this session we'd talk about mouthpieces and reeds for the clarinets, for the saxophones, for the various woodwind instruments. You know, there's quite a bit of difference between mouthpieces for the woodwinds and mouthpieces for the brass instruments. For the brass instruments, and I brought with me a vuvuzela. And the vuvuzela has a mouthpiece that is very similar to a brass instrument. And it's like right here, you can see the end of it. It has, if I hold it this way, whoops, yeah. This is better. You can see what it's like. You blow into it, and you blow into it by putting it to your mouth. You don't put the mouthpiece in your mouth, but with woodwinds it's different. You put the mouthpiece in your mouth by about a third of the way in, and then you have a vibrating reed. And this is the kind of thing that I want to show you today. For flutes and for piccolos and for fifes, it's a little different too. You have a hole on one end. This is a fife. It was made in Massachusetts. And the fifes have just a plain hole as a mouthpiece. And with the flute, you have a lip plate, what's called a lip plate. This is not a true lip plate, but you can see what I mean. I didn't bring the flutes with me, but you can see it's kind of built up a little. A lot more on a real flute and piccolo than you have in this, but this shows you the idea of what it's like. And you blow across it. Fifes and flutes do the same thing. Now, when it comes to woodwinds, though, you have vibrating reeds. And I'm going to show you things about the reeds so you can understand it. But first, let me show you these. If you're marching in a parade, and I've done it many times, then you have to have a way to carry your music. How do you carry your music when you're marching along, you know, and you've got a saxophone, or you've got a flute, or you've got a clarinet, and you're doing a march? How do you take care of the music? Either you memorize it, or you have a small version of it, like marches. You can get books of marches that are small books, and you put them in lyres. These are lyres, L-Y-E-R-S is how you spell it, and they attach to instruments. So when you're marching down the street, or if you're doing a formation at a football game like we used to do, you have a way to hold the music. This is like a music lyre, and this one here, you know, you press this in and it opens up to put your music in it. And this one goes to a clarinet. Now there's a screw arrangement. And what you do is you unscrew it, you put it around the instrument where you want it, and usually that's between the first and the second part of the body of the instrument. You screw it in, and you're marching down the street, and there your music is right in front of you for you to see it. Now this lyre, is for a saxophone. And what it has is, saxophones have a little place close to the neck piece, and you stick this in, and it slants out, and your music, you put it in, and there it is for you to see. So some of them have different shapes to accommodate the shape of the instrument. With the saxophone, this would stick out a little, and the music is here. For the clarinet, you put it around the instrument and screw it in place. Now the flutes, I don't have a flute lyre, but the flutes have a little wooden area, and you stick it underneath your elbow and hold it as you're playing, and it holds the music in front of you. But there has to be a way for you to read music when you're marching in a parade. I personally think that most of the things that you do in a parade are marches that you've memorized, so you actually don't need the lyre. But you do see people that have to use them, and these are two of them. I don't have any more. Now, what about the mouthpieces? Well, mouthpieces have reeds. This is a mouthpiece, an actual mouthpiece. There, I'll hold it like that. You can see it better. There's an opening right here. That's good. Now, this one goes to a soprano saxophone, one of my soprano saxophones, of course. And the instrument's a little, so the mouthpiece is a little. but this is the way they are. On a larger instrument like a clarinet or a larger saxophone, they're going to just be a bigger size, but they're all made somewhat like this. There's this little place here where you screw it in, and there's a place here where you put the reeds. And so I'm going to show you how that's done, but let me talk about reeds. Most reeds are made from wood. The best ones are made from wood, and they're called like cane. Now I've got a package here. You can buy these reeds in boxes. This is a box of Rico reeds. If I can get it open, I taped it shut so it wouldn't fall apart on me, so I was carrying it. Whoops. Well, I'm not sure that I can get it open, but okay, here's a box of Rico reeds. They come like in boxes of 25 or so forth. How do you know if you have a good reed? Well, here's a whole box of them right here. And some of them will be good, and some of them won't be so good. So how can you tell? When you buy a box of reeds, you just take whatever comes in them. Some of them are better than others, but there is a way to tell if it's a good reed or not, you know, and this is the way that you would tell. The easiest way to tell, hold it up to the light, and you'll see that it's thin on top, and then it gets thicker as it goes down the reed. You can tell that just by my holding it up, that the top is lighter. Whoops, maybe this way. I got it right here. The top is lighter, you can see that. And as you go down the reed, it gets a little heavier. This is the advertisement for it. It gets a little thicker, it gets a little heavier, and you can look at the top of it, and you can practically see through the top of it, and it gets thicker and heavier as it goes down. If it gets thicker very, very gradually and very evenly, it's probably a good reed. If it doesn't, if it seems to go down unevenly and there are areas that seem thicker than they should be, then it may not be a good reed. But when you get a good reed, you can use it for about 25 hours of playing time. And the wood reeds are always the best. Professionals use them all the time. You can get plastic reeds. I've had those too. But plastic reeds are harder to play. The tone isn't as good. But the advantage for students is that it lasts for years. It's almost indestructible, plastic reeds are. But these are the reeds. Now you also can get plastic coated reeds like this, where the top is black. It's been coated on both sides with some kind of a substance. It's been coated on both sides, but this part has not been coated, just the top part. And they play very well. I used to buy a lot of these for my clarinets when I was playing clarinet a lot. And when I was playing it, I would use these plastic reeds. The advantage of these plastic coated reeds is the fact that you don't have to soak them in your mouth. The key to having a good reed is the reed has got to be good, and then you need to put it in your mouth and moisten it before you play. Otherwise, it's going to squeak like everything. You're not going to get a good tone. And you have to do this repeatedly. Also, the wooden reeds, they crack easy. You get nicks in them, and especially students, they're always dropping an instrument, and they get nicks on the top and little cracks in the top, and gradually the reed is no good. This is the same reed with a plastic coating on it, just on the top though. It's not all plastic, and they were played very easily and very well. So when you get an instrument, and I can see if you look at this one where I'm just moving it, you can see how the light changes it right there at the top of the reed. It's lighter, and then gradually it gets thicker. And this is a good reed. This is the way they're all supposed to be. If it got thick, but it got thick too fast, then it wouldn't vibrate well, and it wouldn't be such a good reed. But when you're buying them by the box, you can't tell what's in it. You'll have a few good ones. You'll have some ones that you don't like so well. When you put the reed on the mouthpiece, the way that you do it, here's the mouthpiece right here. You lay the flat side of that reed on the mouthpiece like so. Now, I can't do it too accurately here because I'd have to have the ligature in place. But when you get it in that position, then you would put the ligature on. The ligature is right here. This is the little thing that screws in. So when you put it on, and I'll have to do this, I'll try to do it within camera range so you can see what I'm doing, but it's hard to do it because I have to look at it to do it. You slip the ligature on, and then you screw it and get it tightly in place. Now this ligature is a little bit, it's for another instrument, but you can see how it goes. When you screw it in and that reed is in place, then you're ready to play. It just screws in underneath. There are some ligatures that only have one screw, but I don't particularly care for them. Most of them have two screws. You can get them in gold and silver, and you slip it on an instrument. Whoops, I'm doing this without the reed in place because it's going to be easier for you to see. Without the reed, you can see. You just slip it in place, and suppose the reed is right there, and you just screw it on, and there it is. And so you're ready to play. Let me try it with this one here. See, the reed is black, the mouthpiece is black, so it's harder to see, but also the size of the ligature is much better. So once I get this screwed in and in place, which I'm doing now, it's ready to be played. And but remember, it has to be moistened. Now, to give you a couple of tips, if your reeds come in different strengths, stiffer reeds have higher numbers. The softest reed is going to be like a number 1. Then it goes to 2 and 3 and 4, and I think some people get up to 5. The lower numbers are easier to play. I usually start off students with, say, level 1 or level 2, and for the most part I've kept it level 2 for myself because they are a little bit easier to play. The levels, the higher levels, are harder to play. They're stiffer, but a lot of people like them because even though they are stiffer, they play very well and they get a good tone. But I think it's easier to play, and I'm screwing this in place now so you can see it with a lighter colored reed. I think it's easier to do a number 2, but a lot of people prefer number 3. I think number 2 and number 3 are the preferred. All right, so I have screwed this in. The ligature, 2 places to screw it in. I've got the reed in place, the flat side down toward the mouthpiece, and you can see that this isn't entirely flat, that the flat, it sticks out a little, especially when you come down here, but there is a flat side is really on the instrument itself, on the mouthpiece itself. If you want to have a reed that's not quite as stiff, you can always loosen the ligature and you can push the reed down a little bit so it's not exactly even with the top of the mouthpiece. Now I'm going to try this. I don't know if you can see it very well on television, but I'm going to put it down just a little bit, and it makes the reed act like it's a softer reed. If for some reason, if for some reason you want it stiffer and a little harder to play, then you see it's not quite even with the top. That makes it a little softer. If I wanted the reed to be stiffer, say it's a number 2, but I really want it a little stiffer, it's a little harder to play, I would push the reed up a little and get it so it's just slightly beyond where the mouthpiece is, and that will automatically make it stiffer. You can see this extends a little bit out. Reeds are easy to chip, and so you have to be careful. But as you can see, there's a space there. That reed vibrates, and it vibrates against the mouthpiece. This is how this reed works, and this is how the rest of them work. Now, plastic reeds are harder to play, but they're practically indestructible. The problem is they're not particularly good in terms of tone, and I thought I had an instrument here with a plastic reed. I have a plastic reed somewhere. Here we go. Well, these reeds are partially plastic and partially not. Here's a case that the reed comes in. You can get it for a single reed, like this is. I'm not taking the reed out, but you can open it up and you can take the reed out and then put it back. A lot of people just leave the reeds in place, but you need to really wipe off the reed when you're finished playing because the moisture is in there still. Wipe it off, and then you can either put it back on the instrument or put it in a case like this, which is made to hold one reed at a time. And so this is basically what it is with reeds. Now with recorders, oh, here we go. I want to show you this. This is a xylophone, and it has a plastic reed on it. I'm going to take this plastic reed off. That's what I was hunting for. The plastic reeds, they come basically like this. You can see through them. They're stiff. They're really stiff. It takes a lot of work to make them vibrate. They're hard to play. The advantage is, if you're just practicing and you're not doing a performance, is that they're impossible to destroy. I had one for many years, just one. This is not it. This is another one. But they're plastic, and they're practically indestructible. You can't chip them, but the mouthpiece has been carved into the instrument. Now, this is some of these bamboo instruments. I don't know if I'll take this off or not, but take a look at that. This is a xylophone. A xylophone is called a Maui or a Hawaiian saxophone. You see how that's been carved out? This is supposed to be somewhat like the opening of this mouthpiece here. And it's called the Maui or the Hawaiian. There we go. Now you can see the Hawaiian saxophone. It's called the Hawaiian saxophone. The ligature is built in, and it doesn't really come off. It comes off with a struggle, but I don't want to go through it because it'd be a struggle to get it back. You slip the reed right in here, like if it was a regular mouthpiece, slip it underneath the ligature, which is right here, screw the ligature in place, and then you are ready to play it. But I particularly don't like these instruments, the mouthpiece arrangement on these bamboo instruments in which the mouthpiece has been carved right into the instrument like this has. The problem is there's no flexibility. A lot of times when you're playing an instrument with a reed, you may want to twist the mouthpiece a little, you may want to change the position a little. This is just stable, this is just solid. It is what it is. There's very little wiggle room for anything that you might want to do. But it does work. It does play. It's a bamboo instrument. It's never cracked on me, and it's thicker. One of the reasons it wouldn't crack is it's thicker, so it's a better quality. It has the tone hole in back, which is unusual. A recorder will not have a reed, but it has a tone hole in back. This one has a tone hole in back, but it's called a saxophone. And when they advertise it, you don't see too many of them. When they advertise it, they say, gee, you can go on a picnic, or you can climb a mountain, stick it in your pocket, and play it whenever you want, and you've got a source of music. It's too big to stick in your pocket. They don't consider that when they advertise it. I don't know of anyone that carries one around so they can go mountain climbing and play it when they're mountain climbing. But it does do what it's supposed to do. And as you can see, if we look at the mouthpiece, you can see like an indentation here. And this is where the ligature goes. I don't know if we can pick that up or not. Whoops. You see that indentation? There's an indentation right where I put my fingers. That's where the ligature goes. And that's why I don't take the ligature off. I can, but it's a struggle to get it back in. It's got its place, and you slip the reed underneath the ligature, slip the ligature on top of or on the bottom part of the reed, screw it in place, and you've got your mouthpiece right there. A lot of Hawaiian instruments that use reeds come this way, but professionals don't like to use that. They like a regular mouthpiece. You see the indentation where the ligature goes. In order to get the plastic reed, I took the plastic reed off, but in order to get the plastic reed in, I'd have to slide it under the ligature, which I'll do after the show is over, re-screw this thing, and then you've got it all set. Now it does play. There's no problem in having it play, but it is harder to play. And then when you get a plastic reed on top of that, which is hard to play anyway, it makes it more difficult. The reason I wanted to bring this in is that so many instruments have a different way of having a mouthpiece, and with the recorders, you can see that there's a block right here, and it's called a fipple mouthpiece. Here would be the fipple. Now I have another instrument. I'm getting a little low on time here, so I want to show you this instrument. This is a Renaissance instrument, and here is the mouthpiece. It's a fipple mouthpiece, and for some reason it's come unglued. I can pull it off, and that's the fipple right there. This is called a fipple mouthpiece. That you blow right in there. This is like a covering for it. But you don't have fipple mouthpieces in all of the instruments. A lot of them are with reeds and vibrating reeds. Oboes and bassoons have double reeds, and I don't have an oboe or bassoon at this time, so I can't show you that. But this is a covering, and this is the fipple mouthpiece, and this is a part of the block. I can stick my finger down, but the whole idea is not to allow the air to escape except where you want it to escape. And this mouthpiece is really a covering for that fipple mouthpiece. So it's interesting to see how people play instruments, reeds, how they work. The best ones are made out of cane, which is like a plant. But if you don't want that, then you can get plastic-coated reeds, which work quite well. As I showed you before, these are all clarinet reeds and or soprano saxophone reeds. Or you can get plastic reeds, which are hard to play, and I would not recommend the student use them. I think you have to let your embouchure grow and develop into what it's going to be. And then once you reach a certain amount of maturity with your embouchure, which does take some time, you have to develop that. And then if you want to use a plastic reed for practicing, so you're not chipping it and make the wooden reeds last longer, then that's okay. But to depend upon plastic for everything, your mouth is going to get pretty sore after a while because they are very stiff. They're not that flexible. They are harder to play, but they are playable, and a lot of people use them. But professionals would never use them. They would always use the wooden reeds. Now, a wooden reed, a cane reed, is good for about 25 hours of playing time before it kind of comes to a conclusion as to how well it vibrates. But students, a lot of times, they're chipping it, they're putting it in their mouths, they don't exactly know where to get it. It chips and stuff like that, and they're always buying reeds. I find that the best way would be to use the plastic-coated reeds. It's plastic-coated only on the top. On the bottom, you have the wooden reeds. They're a little more expensive. They play really well. So, you know, as I go through these music classes, I want to show you not just what recorders can do. Recorders are a springboard for many other instruments that are woodwinds, but there's lots of other ways to play, and reeded instruments are very common. Oboes, bassoons, saxophones, clarinets use them. The flutes and the piccolos use those with a lip plate. The fifes don't have a lip plate. They just have a hole that you blow across. But it's important to know your instrument and how to blow across it, or how to put it in your mouth and play with it, how to tongue, how to get the right pressure on it. Saxophones and clarinets all use regular reeds, single reeded instruments. The recorders don't. They're very handy because you don't have to bother with the reeds, but most of the woodwinds use reeds except for the flutes and the piccolos, and the fifes, of course. So I guess I'll close it here. We don't have much time left, but I want to let you understand a little bit about how these instruments are put together, all of the woodwinds and some of the brass, and so that you can understand music in a bigger context of how you produce the sound. That sound is produced actually in the mouth area with the reeds or blowing air across an instrument. I want to show you how these reeds work. So I'm going to close it here, and we'll be doing something else next time. Please join me then.